Ever wondered why Australians count flies instead of checking the weather? It's not just a quirky down-under habit, it's a bona fide greeting ritual. You see, in the land of kangaroos and koalas, the number of flies buzzing around could tell you more about the day's forecast than any weather app. One fly? Mild day, 20 flies, blistering heat wave. It's a practical, if not slightly gross weather barometer, so next time you're in Australia, forget the meteorologist, just count the flies. Now, Australians have no filter, and no, we're not talking about their coffee. Down under, the folks speak their minds, and they do it with a cheeky grin. They're as straightforward as a kangaroo on a pogo stick and twice as bouncy. It's like they've taken the concept of beating around the bush and tossed it into the outback, never to be found again. Take, for instance, the time a bloke asked his Aussie mate if he put on a few kilos. His mate, without missing a beat, replied, "Nah, mate, I'm just smuggling a couple of koalas under me shirt." Or consider the classic Australian response to the question, "Do you know where I can find a good cup of coffee?" The answer? Well, it's not at Starbucks, I can tell you that much. And if you ever find yourself lost in the vast Australian wilderness, don't bother asking for directions. You'll likely get something like, "Well, it's not back the way you came, mate." Helpful, right? But it's all in good fun. Aussies treat everyone with the same level of friendly banter, regardless of who you are or where you come from. It's a unique blend of humor and honesty that's as refreshing as a cold beer on a hot summer's day. So if you ever find yourself the butt of an Aussie joke, don't take it to heart. Remember, in Australia, it's not racism, it's just your turn. In Australia, they don't care about politics, mostly because they can't remember who their Prime Minister is. It's almost like politics is a game of musical chairs down under, only instead of chairs, they're swapping Prime Ministers. One day it's one bloke, next day it's another Sheila. They've had more Prime Ministers in the last decade than some have had hot dinners. It's not that they're disinterested, it's just that it's hard to keep track. It's like trying to follow a soap opera that's on 7 times a day. And you know what? They don't really mind. They're more interested in whether their footy team won or how cold the beer is. So if you're looking for heated political debates, you might be out of luck. In Australia, they're more likely to ask you if you think the Roos will make the finals than who you reckon will be the next PM. In Australia, the only poll they care about is the footy ladder. Scene script. Speaking of footy, don't ever order Victoria Bitter in Queensland. You might as well ask for a Vegemite and pineapple pizza. Ah, the great Australian loves football and beer. It's the stuff of legends, mates, like kangaroos and koalas. Beer and footy are as Australian as it gets. But just like you wouldn't confuse a kangaroo with a koala, you better know your beers and footy teams. You see, in Australia, we take our beers and footy very seriously. We're not just talking about a casual pint at the pub and yelling at the telly. Oh no, we're talking about heated debates, lifelong loyalties and family feuds. It's like our very own Game of Thrones. But instead of dragons, we've got footy balls and beer bottles, and let me tell you, it's equally dramatic, if not more. For instance, ordering a Victoria Bitter in Queensland is akin to walking into a lion's den wearing a steak suit. You might as well paint a target on your back. It's not that we Queenslanders don't appreciate a good brew. It's just that Victoria Bitter is, well, let's just say it's as welcome as a crocodile in a kiddie pool. Now let's talk footy. Think of it as a religion, where the oval ball is the holy grail, and the players are deities. From the sun-baked outback to the bustling cities, footy is a passion that unites and divides us at the same time. We cheer, we jeer, we laugh, we cry, and that's just the first quarter. The rivalries run deep and the loyalties deeper. From the Brisbane Lions to the Adelaide Crows, from the Sydney Swans to the West Coast Eagles, every team has its army of die-hard fans ready to defend their colours to the hilt. So next time you're in the land down under, remember to choose your beer and footy team wisely. It's not just a matter of taste, it's a question of survival. Remember, in Australia, beer and footy aren't just pastimes, they're a way of life. Did you know Australia's first police force was made up of convicts? Talk about setting the bar low. Now you might be thinking, wait, what? Convicts as cops? But folks, it's true. When the Brits shipped off their convicts to Australia, they didn't just leave them to their own devices. No, they said, right, you've been a naughty bloke, now put on this badge and keep the peace. It was like a real-life version of the fox guarding the hen house. But here's the kicker, it actually worked out. Sort of, well, not really, but it's a good yarn to spin. This unconventional approach to law enforcement might just be one of the reasons Australia's culture is so unique, so laid back, and so, well, Australian. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying all Aussies are descendants of convicts turned cops. But we do have a knack for making the most of a bad situation, and we did end up with some pretty entertaining stories. Like the time a convict cop tried to arrest a kangaroo, or the time one of them tried to put a shark in jail for stealing his catch of the day. Okay, I might be making those up, but they sound believable, right? But let's be real here. This unconventional method of policing had its drawbacks. I mean, it's not exactly a foolproof system when the same bloke who was locked up for theft is now in charge of catching thieves. It's a bit like asking a dingo to babysit your baby. Still, it's all part of our rich, quirky history, and it's these kind of oddball stories that make Australia such a fascinating place. So if you ever feel like you're not qualified for a job, just remember Australia once had convicts as cops. And if they could make it work, so can you. You might not become the world's greatest cop, but hey, at least you're not trying to arrest a kangaroo, right? So why should you visit Australia? Well, aside from the chance to count flies and enjoy some good-natured ribbing, you see, Australia is not just a country. It's an experience, Heinz. A wild, hilarious, and absolutely unforgettable experience. And it's not just because we have kangaroos hopping around in the backyard or because we serve beer in shoes. Yes, you heard me right. We've taken the phrase, putting your foot in your mouth, to a whole new level. Now, you might be wondering, why on earth would I want to go to a place where I could be the butt of the joke, or where the weather forecast is determined by the number of flies buzzing around? Well, let me tell you, that's exactly the charm of Australia. It's the place where no one takes themselves too seriously, where every day is an adventure, and where the most mundane activities are turned into a laugh riot. In Australia, we don't just talk, we chat. And not just about the weather or the footy scores, but about anything and everything under the sun. And the best part, we don't care who you are or where you're from, we'll pull your leg just the same. Because in Australia, it's not racism, it's just your turn. A land where the phrase "no filter" doesn't just apply to Instagram photos, but to our everyday conversation. Speaking of footy scores, let's not forget our love for beer and footy. It's not just a pastime, it's a religion. A religion that unites us all, regardless of our differences. But remember, ordering a Victoria Bitter in Queensland is akin to walking into a lion's den wearing a meat suit. So do your homework before you order a pint. And if you're worried about the law and order, don't be. Our first police force was made up of convicts. Yes, that's right. In Australia, we believe in second chances and in making the most of what we've got. And look at us now, we're one of the safest countries in the world. So to sum it all up, Australia is a place where the unexpected is the norm, where humor is a way of life, and where everyone is welcome. It's a place where you can let your hair down, have a good laugh, and simply enjoy life. And let's not forget, Australia is home to some of the most stunning landscapes in the world, from the Great Barrier Reef to the outback, from our pristine beaches to our bustling cities. There's something for everyone in Australia, whether you're an adventurer, a nature lover, or just someone looking for a good laugh. So pack your bags, count your flies, and come down under. Trust me, it's not as scary as it sounds, unless you order Victoria Bitter in Queensland.